Hey, I'm Joel from Eskimo Joe.
My name is Cav, and I'm also from Eskimo Joe.
And I'm Stu from Eskimo Joe.
And we are
Eskimo Joe. Eskimo Joe first started as a side project. Myself and Joel were in a band called Freud's Pillow, which were a horrible moment in time when funk and metal met in the middle. And myself and Stu had lived next door to each other from when we were about 5 years old. So we were already kind of like jamming and writing some songs. And Joel came over and he was actually playing guitar in Freud's Pillow, but he was like, hey, how about I come over and play drums? And the moment the three of us got in the room, we played in other bands and done other musical things, but it was really obvious straight away that we had chemistry between the three of us as far as just, friends, but also musically it just worked. And I think that is kind of the reason why we're still together 22 years later.
And you guys were writing songs together before our band started, right?
Yeah.
Doing some gigs in cafes.
We were really inspired by bands like the Pixies and the Beatles, and we kind of put those two things together and we did this kind of folky, Beatlesy Pixies gigs. It wasn't until the campus band competition, I think we tried to enter the campus band competition with our band Freud's Pillow. We came second. I think we lost to Humbug that year, is that right? And then, and so we kind of formulated this plan that if we had this one kind of pretty stupid novelty song, and we were like...
I think we had about four stupid novelty
songs. That came afterwards, because we were like, if we write 3 more of these, we might win the campus band competition, and calculated, we won the campus band competition. Yeah, it was our first gig, the campus band competition. I think by the time we played the national finals, that was our fourth show,
Yeah, and we ended up winning the whole thing nationally and getting to play at a festival the next day called Livid in Brisbane that had pretty much every Triple J playlisted band playing this festival. So we were playing with these, mega idols of ours, and kind of backstage after we played our gig, and it gave us a view into that world. And then the next day came back and quit university and here we are.
I'd already quit engineering to study jazz, which my folks were super happy about, and then I quit jazz to be in a band.
I tell your wife that all the time. You could have married an engineer, but you got Stu.
She cries herself to sleep every night.
But what part of the prize package of the campus band competition was we got to record an EP at Troy Horse Studios. So we went in there and we'd written a few more songs by this stage, and we went and recorded the Sweater EP. And then we were lucky enough that it ended up on the desk of Jane Gazzo, who was the resident night DJ at Triple J at the time. And she played Sweater, and it just took off on the Request Fest, I think they called it. And so we just started touring from that point on, and then we actually haven't stopped.
What did we do? We just bought one-way tickets to Sydney and went, okay, we're doing this.
Just started touring.
We didn't have a credit card, and we didn't know that you couldn't hire or do anything without a credit card. So that was the first bump in the road as soon as we got off the plane.
I think the first bump was drinking the entire tour budget on the first night. That was the first bump in the road.
Our manager at the time had the tour budget and was like, another drink, anyone? And we were like, yes, please.
Matt Craig.
So for anyone who kind of grew up in the late 90s, you would have watched a show called Recovery. And, they had all these amazing bands playing, every morning, like really cool touring bands. And we got asked...
And us.
And, we got asked to come and play Recovery, and we were absolutely stoked because we, loved this show and we thought this is a really big deal. When we got there, the artwork to Sweater we got from a knitwear catalogue that we got from an op shop. So we just found these dudes, who were wearing sweaters, and we put them in there and put our names underneath. And they genuinely thought that was the band. And so they had these ginormous pictures, behind us where we were playing. We rocked up and they looked at us really confused. They were like, "Where's Eskimo Joe?" We was like,
we thought you guys were 40 years old.
Yeah, that's right. So so I think we did a photo shoot after
But
that.
funnily enough, I think the fashion would have actually put us back into Triple J these days.
Oh my god, moustaches,
sweaters,
slacks, yeah.
By the time we got to our second EP, we'd just basically been touring non-stop and sort of writing songs when we were back for a week or two and then hitting the road again. And we had a collection of songs, but by that stage we'd sort of drummed up a bit of notoriety. Sweater had done us a lot of favours, which was awesome. So there was a bit of record company heat on our backs. We just felt like there was real momentum going. So by the time we got to record that second EP, we had people clambering over us to sign us.
We did 2 really long 10-week tours in a row, and the first one was, touring Sweater, and then the second one, we basically borrowed, about $4,000 off all of our collective parents, and we got Lindsay Gravino, who had just done some amazing records with Magic Dirt and The Living End, managed to convince him to kind of have us in his studio for 4 days, and we recorded this EP, which is the self-titled CD that we put out, and not really knowing whether it was the end of the ride or not. I think at that point in time, I think there was, even though, like Stu said, there was record company interest, that kind of came, but I think when we went to record it, we still were like, is this the last thing we're going to get to do, Yeah,
it was the difficult second EP. But we were following up Sweater, which was, had become bigger than the band, or the band wasn't much of a thing at that stage, but everyone seemed to know that song, but not much else about what we did musically or whatever. So we probably, with the second EP, were probably chasing our tails a little bit to follow up that song, which had gotten a bit out of control. It was a stepping stone then to making the first record. The second EP was kind of like, okay, now we know what we don't want to do musically, because we've definitely done it, and maybe now we want to make music that we might want to listen to rather than just what's gonna go across live if you're supporting Friends of Rom, say, which is what we were doing a lot of at that point, playing with punk bands and stuff like that. And in fact, signing our first label deal with Modular, the clincher was that Pav, who's a well-known promoter, sort of casually dropped into conversation, I want to offer you guys the Offspring tour, which was every band in our position at that point, that was like the prize gig kind of thing.
They just won the Hottest 100.
Yeah, it was, playing at mega arenas or whatever, tennis centres and that kind of thing. Casually, as Pav does, kind of went, and you can sign to my label as well. And we were like, this guy's the coolest guy we've ever met. And he's friends with the Beastie Boys. We ended up signing with Modular, and we released that first EP, and then went on to make the Girl album a few years later, I think. But yeah.
It's happened twice, actually, in really full-on scenarios, and one of them was we just launched in Chilara, and we'd had Foreign Land had come out, and it was doing well on the radio, and we were playing Triple J's One Night Stand, which is like such an honour to get to play that thing because it's a live broadcast. And we got on stage because we had that sample at the beginning of Foreign Land, which is that, to be technical about it, that's going on, but the drummer needs a click track to stay in time with that sample. So the guy who was doing the monitors hadn't plugged it in properly, so we could hear the sample but not the click. And so, like, live to air, we had to kind of make this decision of, like, do we keep going with this? And we decided to leave the stage, and then we fixed it and came back on. And it was just one of those, like, oh, God, and then you get on with it. And the show was good, but exactly the same thing happened when we played the Sound Relief. And luckily enough, the first track was From the Sea, which the backing track is a click track. It's like the metronome. So, and halfway through, if you watch the footage, you can see the click track comes in, and we just look at each other and go, yes! It's like we're in front of like 80,000 people, plus it's getting filmed.
Every time he tells that story, the crowd gets bigger.
Oh, it was like 30. There's 150,000 people.
700,000 people.
Yeah.
ARIA awards were always sort of a source of a lot of career milestones and highlights. Like winning our first ARIA just felt incredible, and just that first time you step foot in the lobby of, is it the Hyatt or Marriott?
Yeah, next door, and all the bands and managers are all milling around.
Yeah.
You feel like you've been led into the inner sanctum of the music industry.
It's like being, invited into the Freemasons Hall, the Stonemasons Hall, when they're discussing world domination. But I think one of my favourite ARIA moments was we won. I can't remember what ARIA it was because I was just so high at the time, because the night before I'd proposed to my wife and I wanted to keep it a secret from my parents. So I decided to tell my parents on stage during our acceptance speech, because I obviously knew we were going to win. That's how cocky we were. So we got up there and I told the story and said that, yeah, Mum, I'm getting married. And we walked off and we had a great night. But then about an hour or so later, I got a call from my mum saying, I just got a call from someone on the East Coast. Is there something you need to tell me? I'm like, no, you're just going to have to wait and watch.
Yeah.
So she did. She watched and then called me back and we celebrated. It was good times.
I like how that reminds me of like walking off stage at the campus band final in Brisbane, and we hadn't even got off stage, and Stu turned to me and went, "We just won!" And there were like 4 bands
Left.
and until 2011, you kind of did that, and until 2011, you were usually right. But yeah, it was that there was a confidence with Eskies since we started that probably fueled us through years of not selling out gigs and those kind of things at the start, when we were all still on the dole or whatever, that you needed to push through to get to the next level. Yeah, and when we got there, we fully appreciated it, because we'd certainly done heaps of yards of not being there.
It hadn't been an overnight success, and if you look at the ARIAs, for instance, like we got to go to a couple, would maybe win one, lose a few, and so by the time we kind of won ARIAs for significant stuff like Song of the Year with Black Fingernails Red Wine, we really appreciated the moment, because we didn't feel like it had just been given to us. I think we'd always come with this attitude of like kind of being the outsiders, because being from Western Australia, like there's no Svengali who's going to roll in to Fremantle and go, I'm going to take you and show you your dreams and here's some money. You really have to like get in a car, drive for a very long time before anyone even gets to see you play. So we'd kind of done a long time of that on the road. So to be there finally with all the big kids at the ARIAs felt pretty special.
There's a culture everywhere.
Playing the AFL Grand Final, that's another huge bucket list item, I think, for any Australian band. Love it or hate it, AFL's just deeply entwined in Australian culture, and I mean, we're massive AFL fans ourselves. Australia values sport so highly over the arts, so the chance for the arts to shine so much on that sort of a stage was amazing to be a part of that, because usually they rope in an international act to sort of give it some level of authenticity and some gravity, lend some weight to the proceedings. But I know that Australia is so capable of delivering beyond anything that an international artist can bring to that stage, because we are Aussies and that is the Australian game. So it was pretty special to be part of the first ever All-Australian lineup. Yeah.
Also, I mean, the one time in history where being in the most isolated capital city in the world was awesome. It was like, we're finally in the most happening place in the world. Obviously it's the first and only time that we're going to get a grand final in Western Australia. So, it was pretty awesome to be able to do it on our home turf and playing those events like Sound Relief, and it's just this huge affair and you're kind of hanging on by your fingernails to a certain point. But with the grand final this time around, we'd done it a few times, so I think all of us had this like headspace of like, we might never get to do something like this again, so let's just enjoy the moment. And I think we all did. I think we all got to slow our heart rates down just enough to really be there in our bodies for a little while this time around.